your take on President Ruto's speech and views?
I would just add on to what Tobias has mentioned. Specifically, I love the idea of highlighting the achievements of the UN and the purpose it has served over time in human history. And then he went down to saying how now we are at a crossroads, right? And it's important that the UN creates a new structure for itself, specifically bringing in now the African continent, particularly into the seat, and ensuring that we have at least 2 representatives from the African continent. And I loved how he also addressed the issue of the creation of the UN as the Bretton Woods Conference, as a result of the Bretton Woods. What Richard would say, it's the unholy trinity, the IMF, the World Bank, and the WTO. So it's important that we restructure the global financial architecture. And that's a huge task, considering that the African community needs to have one voice in order to achieve such a target.
Yeah. And as we speak, do you think that we are divided when it comes to the African voice?
Honestly, that's my opinion would be, to some extent we are.
Okay.
So if we ask all countries from the South Africa to Liberia to Morocco whether they actually agree with the sentiments,
yes,
I'm sure we'd have a divide. Yeah, we're still struggling to implement the ACFA and everything related to it. So we have a long way to go. Yeah.
All right.
That's my opinion.
Now, President William Ruto also noted that for Kenya to be able to implement its NDCs, which is the nationally determined contributions, it will require $56 billion US, right? How exactly do you think this implementation is going to be conducted, realistically, in your view, Tobias?
Thank you very much. The figure 56 billion, that's about 7.2 trillion Kenya shillings, if my math serves me correctly.
Approximately.
Yeah, so it is an ambitious goal, and it is captured in Kenya's second set of NDCs from 2031 to 2035. And the NDCs actually breaks it down. This is not a figure that can be achieved from one source, whether it's from external donors or even from government alone. It has to be a blended kind of finance model.
Yes.
And around 19% of that figure is projected to come from catalytic public finance to de-risk investment in the green space. But also a huge component of it, about 81%, is projected to come from the private sector as an investor in this particular space.
Okay.
So looking at the private sector as an engine towards achieving the green transition that Kenya is looking towards. And the Kenya's second NDCs paint a vision of a whole of government, a whole of society approach. Now, this financing is meant to go towards mitigation, it's meant to go towards adaptation, but you realize that a lot of emphasis is being laid on the private sector. From our lived experience, we've seen a lot of potential in the private sector. At KCIC alone, we've supported almost 3,500 green ventures in the country and across the region. Now, these are actual innovations coming out of Kenya, whether it's in clean cooking, whether it's in circular economy, whether it's in climate smart agriculture, whether it's in water, e-mobility and all that. So there's huge potential there.
Right. And
through this sort of blended finance and a whole of society approach, I do think that the ambition is not too far from reach. Yeah.
All right. What about you, Eunice?
I would totally agree with Tobias and add that we have a very strong policy framework, if only we followed it through. So for example, we have the laws which regulate matters to do with climate financing, right? So if counties, for example, streamlined climate change and ensure that the finances which flow, because as Tobias is saying, part of the financing will be locally driven, and some will definitely be internationally driven as well. So for the locally driven financing, can we ensure that our counties, for example, streamline climate change so that the finances is the financing which is released from, for example, national treasury is directed towards realizing the national priorities which we have set in the NDCs. Then secondly, we have the, what do we call it, the Kenya Green Finance